Case, say for an example, if the customer is saying that there are fixed set of stories that we have already estimated and it's going to be around 250 story points. So in order to deliver it, what would be the commitment about 90% confidence, right? So we can say that we would take up to 6 sprints to deliver it. And um, committing at a high level is, if we take 62 as the average, then we would say that okay, we might take 4 sprints to complete that work. So it falls between somewhere between 4 to 6 sprints, right? So here is the calculation. So we add all the values of 5 sprints. That comes to 259 to 60, and it's an average. It's 52 story points that we have delivered. And now we will use the two standard deviations. That is nothing but 42 and 62. So the standard deviation is what we have calculated is 52 minus 10 story points and 52 plus 10 story points. So that's how we added up this number from this average. And it's not guaranteed again. So this confidence level is that we need to explain to the customer that yeah, so we might fall somewhere between 4 to 6 um, sprints. Again, it depends upon the challenges or roadblocks, any risk that we have not anticipated. So that is how we need to answer in the interview. They might ask you, okay, so you would commit to the customer that you will complete the work in 4 to 6 sprints. So you need to say that, provided there is no unanticipated risk or any challenges. So as and when there is a risk or challenge, that you will communicate it to the customer and other stakeholders that there is a delay, or we are completing the work well in advance. So the continuous collaboration has to happen. We need to keep the customer informed always. Yeah. So here the another one is on the estimation of the work. So the product owner was reading out a story. He is saying that we should make use of REST based web services to build our SYA layer. So the Scrum Master, as a Scrum Master, what you would do. So you need to say that I would interrupt, and I would say that it's not a good user story. And you also need to explain why you say that, right? So say for an example, if you are a product owner, you're attending an interview for the product owner, and if they say that you are a product owner, you are reading out your user story, and it says that we should make use of REST based web services to build our SY layer, and your team or your Scrum Master interrupts and says it's not a good story. Why do you say that? So it's a scenario based question, right? It could be twisted based on your role for which you are attending the interview. So let's see the Scrum Master standpoint. So the Scrum Master says that it's not a good user story because it does not meet the following criteria. The user story itself is not clear what the user wants, right? So it just says that we need to use REST-based web services, but why we need to use REST-based web services? Can't we use any other web services, right, in order to achieve the results? And the acceptance criteria is not very clear. So when we say acceptance criteria, so we are saying that we are going to build our SOA layer, but is it our acceptance criteria? No, right? So in order to say that the user story is completed by the team, the acceptance criteria has to be more clear, right? How successfully it is implemented, right? Using the REST-based web services. So it has to be clearly tell the team, and it has to be very specific, right? How it will be the acceptance criteria. And the user story, it doesn't say what are all the steps involved, right? To implement the REST-based web services. It has to clearly articulate what are all the steps involved in order to implement the REST-based web services and to build the SOA layer, and what it is going to be used for. Is it already in use in some other component or in some other project where it is going to be integrated? So it has to have a clear idea of all these things, right? So it has to be very clear and precise what it is for, and the acceptance criteria must state all the steps involved, what all the things will be considered for the story to be completed, right? And it should be actionable, right? So it cannot just say that you use the REST based web services to build the SOA layer. What is it going to be used for, and how soon we need to do that? All those things will be estimated based on the actions that we are going to do, right? So here the scrum master is doing his job correct. Yeah. So the scrum master has interrupted, and he was trying to help the product owner to create the better user story. At the same time, he was trying to help the team also to have a clear and actionable user story in place for them to understand what is the acceptance criteria, right? So it always have the customer in mind, right? The user story is always from the user standpoint, not from the architect standpoint. The product owner could be an architect. He might say that you use the REST-based web services and it is to build the SOA layer, but the architect might be missing the standpoint from the user perspective. What the user is going to do that? What is the user wants to achieve using that SOA layer? So all these things has to be very specific, and the acceptance criteria has to be well explained, and it has to be realistic what we are going to perform. Is it really feasible to build the SOA layer using the REST based web services, right? And will it be able to complete within a sprint, or how many sprint we might need in order to complete that? So these are the things that we need to keep in mind while creating that user story, right? Okay. So the next one is the coach of a Scrum team recommended that the stories be written by hand on an index card rather than entered into the system. It could be an Excel, or it could be a tool like Jira or Azure DevOps. It could be in Confluence or Trello or Asana. It could be any tool, or it could be Excel sheet, right? So the Scrum Master says that you write all the uh, user stories on a index card rather than you're feeding it into the Excel tool. So why does the Scrum Master says that? So if you're a product owner, and if you're getting this sort of questions in the interview, so you need to explain from the product owner standpoint how you would understand that situation, why the Scrum Master says that, or how you would approve the Scrum Master to understand it better. So here, so when we say that we need to write it on a card, we can, the card will be very light, right? It's lightweight card or a piece of paper, and we can take it wherever we go, right? We can stick it on a board, and then the team can see it, and then if there is any dependency with some other team, we can stick that card in the other team's board also. So it is very easy to carry around, and it can be modified. And once we feel that okay, using this card we have elaborated the requirements in detail, now we don't need this card, we can just discard it. But when it comes to the system, it's not ideal or best practice to create a user story or a bug or a defect on the board and then just like that delete it, right? So we need to understand the purpose of creating it in the tool. So in the early stages, it is always good to write it on the index cards. So when we type it into the Excel sheet or any other tool, it might be a bit difficult to modify or discard it, right? So we always need to log into the system, and then we need to make the necessary changes. And when we delete something, we need to keep the stakeholders informed that we have deleted these bugs or user stories, because it's no more in the product, it is no more needed. So it requires a lot of time. So but in the early phases, it's always good to write it in the card, and then once it is well understood, well explained further, then it can be keyed into the system, right? And there are a few more arguments that you can make around this. So when it is written on the card, it's written by hand, and when we write it in a piece of paper, so one person may not know everything, right? So it encourages the team to collaborate and discuss on the requirements. So when someone writes something, so the other person might probe them why you have written it in such a way, right? And say for an example, if the story is going to be picked up by me, so when I write it down on my own, so I would write it in a way that I do understand it better. So and it helps me to probe more and understand more. So it makes me build the trust that I understand the requirement very clearly, and it helps me to interact with the team during the understanding of that requirement, right? And it's always understood and felt that the the team is more creative when they write it using the cards or on a piece of paper, sticky notes, right? So the team would interact more. They would uh, make better suggestions how the requirement can be achieved, right? So it makes them very creative how the product can be further enhanced, right? When they understand the requirements, why there is such a requirement. So they understand things in detail when they write it by hand, and then it makes them be more creative in completing the existing requirement and suggesting some ways of improvement, how it can be enhanced down the lane in the future. Yeah. And there are some arguments as well against the handwritten stories. Say, for an example, it is very difficult to read and track. Then that is something typed on Excel or in Azure DevOps or Jira or Confluence, Trello or Asana. Because when it is handwritten, if I write something, it would be easy for me to understand. But the others in my team, they may not find it very easy to read and track the progress. When it is typed in the tool, it is very easy to see and track it where it stands as on today, right? So that is the drawbacks. The next question is early into the planning of a release. A team felt they could not demonstrate any working system in the first three sprints because the user interface wouldn't be built until the fourth sprint. What should the Scrum Master or the Scrum Coach of the team recommend? Okay, so this is to check your knowledge on whether we would be having the minimum viable product in the early phase of the sprint or early phase of the product development or software development, right? This is to check your knowledge on that area. So the Scrum recommends that building a minimum viable product in the first three sprints, but it may not be possible also. Okay, so the team might be working on some prerequisites that they need to build first in order to deliver the actual product or the minimum viable product, right? So MEP is a product that has the minimum set of features that will satisfy the need of the user. So whoever is going to use that product, right? So there will be some bare minimum features that will be available in the early phase of the development, product development or software development. When we say the first three sprints, right, it's just that if it is a 2 week sprint, it's within the very first 1.5 months. There is a website that the user can log in and check some bare minimum features, which we call it as the minimum viable product. Okay. So the Scrum coach should explain to the team that building an MVP will allow them to get feedback from users early and iterate on the product based on that feedback. This will help the team to build a product that is more likely to be successful. So the Scrum coach, the Scrum Master should explain the necessity of building an MVP in the early phase of the software development or product development so that they can get feedback also on the developed features or functionality of the product or software in the early stage, and then they can work on improving it. The Scrum coach should also recommend the team use a technique called a spike to build the user interface in the fourth sprint. A spike is a short period of time whether the team focuses on investing a particular technical problem. In this case, the spike could be used to investigate how to build the user interface. So, as the Scrum Master or as a Agile coach, what you need to say is that the team can create a spike. Spike is nothing but it's a type of a user story or a task that the team can create to investigate some technical problems or to build some critical functionality. They don't know how long it's going to take, so they create a spike. If they do know how much time it's going to take, They can create a user story itself. Further, it can be estimated how long it's going to take. All those tasks will be done part of the user story itself. So when they don't know that, they create a spike to investigate the technical problem, or to find out how the best features can be achieved in the fourth sprint itself, as they were not able to deliver anything in the very first three sprints. So by following these recommendations, the Scrum coach can help the team to build a successful product. Here are some specific things that the Scrum coach could say to the team. I understand that you are concerned about not being able to demonstrate a working system in the first three sprints. However, I believe that if you could focus on building an MVP, you'll be able to get feedback from users early and iterate on the product based on that feedback. This will help you to build a product that is more likely to be successful. I recommend that you use a technique called Spike to build the user interface in the fourth sprint. A Spike is a short period of time where the team focuses on investigating a particular technical problem. In this case, the spike could be used to investigate how to build the user interface. I'm confident that if you follow these recommendations, you'll be able to build a successful product. So these are the some uh, sentences that you could use to showcase during the interview, that this is how you would explain it to the team, or how you would coach the team. By saying these things, the Scrum coach can help the team to understand the benefits of building an MVP and using a spike to build user interface. This will help the team to be more successful in their release planning. So this is what we have just discussed so far. Okay, so the next one is on the task management. The team wanted to work on refactoring task of a size above about 40 hours, but the product owner was keen on getting a new feature in. How can the Scrum Master help in this case? So what they would ask you is, the team is trying to work on refactoring of about 40 hours, but the product owner was keen on getting a new feature. Okay, so the next question they could ask you is, as a Scrum Master, how you would help the team and product owner in this scenario. So the team wants to work on refactoring task. It's going to take about 40 hours, but the product owner wants the team to create a new feature. So as a Scrum Master, how would you handle this situation? So if you're attending an interview for product owner, they might rephrase this scenario as, the team is insisting that they are going to take about 40 hours to refactor few codes that they have already developed, or to work on the existing developed feature to fine tune, because they have to refactor it to accommodate the upcoming changes. But you want them to develop a new feature. So how would you explain the situation? How would you convince the team to work on the new feature instead of refactoring tasks? This is how you would be questioned. And if you're a developer, if you're a dev lead, they would ask you like, okay, so the product owner wants you to develop a new feature, but at the same time there are some refactoring task. It's going to take about 40 hours, or close to a sprint work. And so how would you convince the product owner? How would you take the help from Scrum Master to achieve the refactoring task? Because the new feature can be developed in the next sprint also, but the refactoring task is of something critical, because it's related to the existing feature that you have already developed. So how would you handle this scenario? This is how the interview question would be phrased. So let's see the Scrum Master scenario now. The Scrum Master can help in this case by understanding the product owner priorities. So as we have already discussed, a Scrum Master should act as a facilitator, and he should not take any sides. So he should not act in favor of the team. At the same time, he should not act in the favor of the product owner. He should always be a neutral person, and he should always support the business vision and goals, right? So but in this scenario, first and foremost, he needs to understand why the product owner is very keen on getting the new feature developed, whereas the team is already explaining that there are some refactoring work, because of which they have to work on it for about 40 hours during the sprint, and it is something of highly critical. It's going to impact the existing developed feature down the lane. So As a Scrum Master, you would try to understand the product owner as well as the team's standpoint, and then you would communicate the product owner's standpoint to the team to make them understand, and you would act as a liaison officer in between the product owner and the team. Okay, so you can facilitate a meeting, you can bridge them in a call or discussion to understand both standpoints and to come to a common solution. And then if the team says that they need to prioritize this work as well, you can help them to prioritize how you can see that half of the team can be aligned to this refactoring task. As soon as they complete the refactoring task, they will join the team back on developing a new feature. Half of the team can be put directly to creating the new feature from the start of the sprint itself. So you can see who can work on or who can accommodate developing the new feature in parallel while rest of the team focuses on the refactoring task. So you can align with the team to understand their hours of work available during this sprint. If someone has planned a vacation, you can try to convince them that they can take it later once the refactoring work is done, or once a new feature is developed, they can take a leave. So you can try to convince if someone is planned a vacation, so we can try to explain them the necessity of the new feature, as you got to know already from the product owner based on your discussion. This is how we can help them to understand, and then you can emphasize the importance of refactoring as well to the product owner. You can have one of the senior developer explain the background why we are going about the refactoring, and then that will help the product owner to understand the situation. And if we can convince the business that the new feature will not be delivered end of the sprint, or it's not going to be started as of now, the product owner can get some idea why the refactoring is so important, so he can try to convince the business. And yeah, so these are the few skills or qualities as a scrum master that you need to keep in mind during this situation. So you need to respect the product owner's priorities as well as the team's priorities, and you need to be patient enough during these discussions to find a solution. So you should be persistent in order to find a solution. You should not just let it go, or you should not give up during the discussion phase between the product owner and team. So the ultimate goal should be finding a solution in this situation as a scrum master. So if you're a product owner, same goes to you as well. So like you will try to understand the team's priorities. You will try to understand why it is the ultimate responsible situation for the team to work on the refactoring right away. At the same time, you will explain the importance of refactoring as well. So if you're a development lead or a testing lead, or if it is a cross-skill team who takes care of development and testing, so you will explain the situation to product owner on behalf of the team, and to the scrum master you will explain the situation, why we are insisting on refactoring, how it is going to affect the existing feature and the new feature that we are going to develop. Right, you can explain the situation to both the parties and you can find a solution. So the next one is for the past several sprints, the team completed development on most of the planned issues, but testing could not be completed. The testers felt it was impossible to complete all the tests in the given time box. How should the Scrum Master proceed? So this is a scenario for the Scrum Master interview. Same goes to the test lead. If you are attending a interview for the test lead, they might put the situation in front of you saying that as a test lead, how would you address the situation? And if you're a product owner, you would be asked, okay, how you would be able to initiate the user acceptance testing without that the test lead or the testing team has completed all the test in the given time box sprint where there was not enough user stories tested, right? So let's see how the Scrum Master handles this situation, or how you would explain the situation, how you would tackle during the interview. So you would try to understand the situation first. Yes, of course, as a Scrum Master, you should talk to the developers and testers to understand why testing is not being completed, whereas the development was completed, because the development is going to take more time than testing, or it could be 50-50, whether there was a delay from development side, which further delayed the testing to kickstart and then to be completed within the sprint, or the testing was is going to take enormous amount of time. They did not had that much of time. So was it the situation? You will try to understand the situation first, and you will facilitate a discussion between the developers and testers. So it is always that the development and testing team, they should have a common agreement that this is the time the user story or the features will be ready for the testing team, and the testing team should commit that okay, from this point of time, I might need a day or two to complete the testing activity. So I would be creating the test cases on day one and two itself. So from day three onwards, I would be available to test the user stories as and when it gets completed. So they can commit on that. So we need to facilitate a discussion between the developers and testers as a Scrum Master to agree on the goal, right? On the sprint goal, and then suggest the changes to the sprint planning process. So now you clearly see that the testing estimation was not so effective because they were not able to complete all the testing activities during the time boxed event. So now, as a Scrum Master, it's your responsibility that the activities are getting completed in the time boxed event. And in this case, it's a poor planning. So the development and testing team had a discussion now. Now you will propose a plan that during the planning meeting, that these are the things that you're going to commit. So you will have a sprint cadence. In the sprint cadence, you're going to agree on the day when you're going to kickstart the testing, when the user story would be available from the development side. So, and when the test cases would be ready for the test lead or the business analyst to review. Likewise, you will agree on the planning of the entire sprint. So this planning will happen on the day one of the sprint, and so you will propose the changes for the sprint planning process. So help the team to prioritize the testing task. So this is another activity, and the team needs to feel the importance why they have to complete it in the very first place. And so the test first approach is nothing but before even the developers start writing the code, the test would be executed. Obviously, it would fail because there is nothing to test, right? So the first approach is going to, if it is a cross-skill team who performs the development and testing. So even before developing the code or developing the product, the testing or the quality test would take place. So at that time it would fail for 100%, and slowly and incrementally we will try to ensure that the testing gets completed or the testing gets passed. So we will try to encourage the team to prioritize the testing related task if it is a cross-skill team where the development and testing takes care by the same set of resources. Okay. And we can always encourage the team to use test automation. So automation would save time when we do the manual testing. If it is going to take a day, and the same can be achieved in an hour if it is getting automated. So we need to encourage the team to automate the testing process. And when the product uh, becomes bigger and bigger during the iterations after a couple of sprints or after a year, obviously we need to rely on the test automation, because there will be a lot of things we need to test before every release. So we need to explain the importance, and we need to facilitate the tools that are available for them to automate the testing process. So another thing is that if there is a resource available but he doesn't know testing, then we can ask them whether they are looking for any training on agile testing methods, so we can help them to be nominated for the trainings on testing process. Okay, so these are the things as a scrum master you would do. If you are a test lead, you can tweak the same points, right? starting from the first one, that you would try to understand the situation from the existing team. If it is a cross skill team, you would try to understand from the developer